Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Moving into the Future. Today, I'm joined by Guy Cleveland. Guy, how are you today?
I'm doing terrific, especially for a Monday afternoon.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, the weather's changing. It's spring is in the air, right?
That's absolutely right. The golf bags coming out, the cobwebs are coming off and ready to roll.
Yeah, that is good news. So, for our listeners out there, I know Guy as a business development specialist. He has his own business that he runs, and then he also founded International Business Development Pros, which is where I know him from. So, Guy, why don't you explain a little bit more what you do for the listeners? I'm sure you'll do it better than I would.
Thanks, Jack, and thanks for having me on today. So two things. What I do for during the day and most of the time for my job is I am a principal at Razor Consulting, and we are an outsourced business development firm. So companies hire us to help them grow. They want us to make connections for them to higher education, for commercial buildings, to developers. So we represent 8 different clients in the construction real estate industry. So I've been doing this for 4.5 years. My co-principal is Gary Anzalone, that most of you know. And in addition to what we do during the day, we also started an organization called International Business Development Professionals. We call it BD Pros for short. And what BD Pros is the reason it came around is there's organization for sales people, there's organization for marketing people, but there was nothing for business development professionals. So that's why we kicked this off. It's been going about 1.5 years. The planning's been going on for more than 3 years. And what we focus on is best practices, education. There's a networking component to it. We're looking at continuing education down the road, but also even more important, we're looked at as a job resource for folks, especially doing business development. So this all started in the New York area. And because Gary and myself, we both came from the construction real estate industry, a lot of the people at the start of the organization were primarily in that arena. The goal is to open it up to all areas of business development. It doesn't matter what market you're in. If you're a professional business development person, we want you in this. So it started in New York. We opened a we opened a Boston chapter about 2 months ago. And we have Julie Brown and Maria Kapoulas that started the organization there. So that's kind of in a nutshell what we're doing.
Yeah, and so that's how we met. We met probably, what was it, in like October of last year, and the proposition of this group was brought to me, and I was very excited about it. I saw a lot of potential in it. I saw it as being something very unique. But one of the things that I saw at first was it being predominantly a networking group, and what I've learned since then is it's much more than that. You mentioned it yourself. The educational aspect of this is very, very interesting because, as you said, there are sales trainings and marketing trainings and various trainings for various fields, but there really isn't anything like that for business development. What do you think it is that's unique about business development that differs from sales, and from an educational standpoint is something the group is trying to help its members develop?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think we have this discussion quite often in the group, and we even had a whole panel discussion about the difference between sales and business development. So we look at it, business development is really building the relationship. You're opening the doors for your clients and you're building that relationship. And sales is more of you're pricing the project and you're closing the deal. So we aren't involved with that, although we do work on the back end of the the system and try to help our clients close deals, but we are there to do business development.
Yeah, certainly. And that relationship and developing that relationship, highlighting the development aspect of that term in business development is so interesting because it's like any other relationship in life. It starts with finding common ground, or at least this is how I do it. I find common ground with somebody, and then you develop that relationship through that common ground, and then you use your practical skills in whatever field it may be to develop trust within that field to then do further business. Would you agree with that? Is that something, again, you're trying to help members become more astute at? Is that accurate?
That is accurate, and you've hit a very common interest of mine, and what I tell people often. When you do business development, you'll sit down with someone initially, and you want to try to develop that relationship with someone. And you hit the nail on the head. It's you find that common link. You may have to ask question after question to find out what that might be. But as long as you're genuinely interested in that person and the questions are from the right place, you find that common denominator and then write it down, because that'll make you golden with this person the rest of your life. And so from that point, you want to build that relationship. You want to get to know this person, and you want to find out what they're looking for, what their interests are. And then from our aspect at Razor Consulting, we want to open these doors for our clients, and we want to make sure they build this relationship that we already have in existence. So it could be the head of Stevens Institute. We've known him for a long time. A lot of our clients are now working for Stevens. And it's just, we know what they're looking for, or we get calls from different institutions saying, hey, do you have an MEP firm? Do you have an architecture firm?
Right.
So that's the second aspect of what we do at Razor Consulting.
Certainly, is being well connected for that. So is that what you and Gary saw, is you two had developed this playbook in some sense as far as how to create these relationships, and then there was the thought that sparked, we can create a group out of this that is designed to, like you said, help educate and bring people together within the business development field to help further their careers. Is that essentially how IBD Pros was founded?
Yeah, BD Pros, like we touched on earlier, all the different aspects. So one aspect I believe we need to touch on is that the really cool part about this group is we have raised over $26,000 in charity money. So we've benefited, I believe, 10 different charities in the year and 2 months that we've been together. So we focus on this. Not every program benefits a charity, but most of the larger programs, and our golf outing, may I add that it's May 2nd, does benefit charities. In fact, the golf event will benefit 2 different charities.
Yeah, and that was again, I'm relatively new to the group. That is something I just learned, that we were a non-for-profit, and credit to you and Gary, because A, it's not the easiest thing to start a non-for-profit, and B, you could certainly make some money on this if you wanted to, between yourselves. After our last event, I got my wheels turning, and I'm like, this is like a cash cow. But so I commend you guys for making it a non-for-profit. That was a dignified decision that you both made early on, that this is going to be a non-for-profit. And again, because of that as educational aspect, while also partnering with charities, it makes a lot of sense in that regard, right?
That is absolutely correct, Jack. Yeah, it was really the educational component that made us want to steer this towards a nonprofit, plus what I just said about raising money for different organizations. That's the way we like to steer this.
Right. So I have 2 questions coming up, and I'm going to ask, and I'm going to cover the educational aspect first. With education, is there going to be some level of further education where you're going to have certificates that you're going to allow for members in the group? And I think of it for somebody very early on in business development who's maybe fresh out of college, in their early to mid 20s, new to whatever industry they're a part of. And this can be a bit of a compass and, as we said, a training mechanism for them to develop in their career. And what you would ideally create is some level of certification in that they can use to help grow their business and sustain themselves wherever they are. Is that something you're working on?
That is correct. Mike Duckfield heads up our educational committee. And what we've done so far is we've reached out to a lot of different college campuses and found out what they're looking for in business development. Do they offer anything in business development? And so we're going to try to make some kind of partnership, maybe even offer reduced dues for students or maybe even free. But we haven't decided on all this yet. But yes to the continuing education. We're looking at some possible accreditation for business development professionals. This is all in kind of initial steps, so we'll be looking into this. I think one of the next steps that we're looking at for the group is potentially even a certification in LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. So there are people that offer these certifications, and we're looking at potentially a panel on LinkedIn, because I think most professionals use LinkedIn as their Bible.
I certainly do.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's there are ways to improve your efficiency using it, and we all need ways to help us. But so those are the two types of accreditation that we're looking at.
That's really great, and I think that's great that we're partnering with colleges and further education in that regard too. That can be a really, really powerful tool, and again, helpful for young people, because you certainly, at least when I was in college, I wasn't going to a business development class of any sort. But with all of the other courses that you take within a business degree, it could easily, you could find some place for a business development course. So I think that's really interesting and really unique. And then the other aspect, and the second question I wanted to ask in regards to charity, how are we going about finding those in the group? Is it something where you had prior relationships, or are we trying to make it business development related? I remember when I was at Indeed, one of the things we did that was really cool is we had to donate a bunch of IT equipment, monitors, that sort of thing. And we found an organization that helped homeless women get back into the job market. So it aligned with what we did at Indeed with helping people find jobs. And it was very unique in that sense. Is that something similar to what we're doing in IBD Pros, or is it more so just any organization that needs some level of help?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. We do have a whole committee that is dedicated to our charity list, and they do go through an evaluation before we do partner with them at certain programs. So we will definitely look into the charity, make sure it's appropriate, and making sure that we give back what they're looking for, and they can help us. I mean, from our charities that we pick, we also look to them to help us spread the word about the event and get the word out, and we want them actively involved. One of the first ones we used was Children of Promise, and we used this organization because I'm on their board of directors, and it just worked out that way where I had the connection. We brought them in, and then they were able to post more about the event and also help us raise awareness. So that is one thing that we look for from our charities.
Very cool. Yeah, that's really interesting. And just to pivot a bit, I noticed too, so when you refer to the group, you refer to it as BD Pros, but when I say it, I say IBD Pros. And that was one of the first things when we talked that I found most appealing about the group is the international aspect of it and the essentially limitless growth that this group can be a part of. You mentioned earlier that we have started a Boston chapter. What does that look like, starting a new group in a new market? You know, Julie's done a great job, I think. But how are we going about that? Are we developing any sort of playbook to help these chapters start up? I could imagine with Boston being the first one, we're developing a lot of those, basically best practices. But how are we going about that in new markets?
That's a good question and a loaded question.
Yeah.
Just because we are going through we're finalizing the whole handbook for the organization right now. The Boston chapter came around faster than we thought it would.
Yeah, it has. And it's grown too.
Yeah, and they reached out and said, we need this and we need this now. And so in order to do that, we had to open a national chapter. As I mentioned, we opened the New York City chapter. In order to open affiliated chapters, we had to open the national chapter. So this kind of pushed us to that point where we really needed to expedite things. So we had the bylaws written, we have a handbook, and then the final part is the chapter affiliations that are all being developed right now, and they're all being finalized. So I believe we have 2 of the 3, and the third should be finalized this week. But also in answering your question, yeah, so the Boston chapter opened, and we're looking at potential openings in Philadelphia, in Texas, and even California. So these are all people that have showed interest, and so we're having some preliminary conversations with them. And yeah, we have no doubt that this will open up into an international organization.
Yeah, that's really exciting, and very cool. I'm very glad I got in when I did to see the group grow and stuff like that. How do you see the different groups working together? Obviously, from a business standpoint, referring business, but how do you see the different chapters, I should say, connecting and being a part of one larger group? What do you have in mind for that?
So how it works right now, because a lot of the programs are virtual, we will share virtual programs with other chapters, but even like the in-person events, we had Julie come down last week for a networking event. And so if someone wants to travel the other organizations and their events, that's fine. But for right now, I think if we wanted to coordinate Boston and other chapters, I think the virtual programs would work the best.
Yeah, and about those virtual programs, can you just highlight a little bit more about those? What type of people are you having on for those? How do you set those up to help members? What are or who, if you can mention, are some of the people that you've had on, and how have they helped members?
Yeah, that's a good question. We've had, speaking of Julie Brown, if you go onto the website, ibdpros.org, you can see some of the past events, and Julie Brown was one of them. We also had Donna Schwartz talking about storytelling, which we all need to do in business development. I mean, I thought I did it well until I heard her talk, and I thought, man, I really need to improve this. I think Gary Anzalone is spot on with his storytelling, but it's so important because it resonates and it leaves an impression with people. It just makes more sense than trying to just tell facts about your company. We've also had the infamous David Meltzer on, and David is known for his the movie, was it Show Me the Money?
Jerry Maguire.
Jerry Maguire. And it was all based on David Meltzer's life. And so we've also had panel discussions on how to hire business development. We had another panel discussion on how do you measure success with business development. By the way, these, again, are all on our website. So
these are available videos on the website?
yes, they're all YouTube links on the website.
And now, just so I'm clarifying, is that for members only or anybody who logs on?
anyone can see the links on the site.
Yeah, that's great. That's really, really good. And between all three phases of what we talked about, well, we haven't really talked about the networking aspect yet, but we can get to that. But between the educational and the charitable aspect, it's really impressive to have that as a foundation. And like you said before, it was simply something that didn't exist, which is a bit shocking because it takes a certain type of person to be in business development separate from sales, because it takes a certain type of person to be in sales too. And certainly in many cases, they intertwine and it's the same person. But for there not to be a focus on that business development was certainly something missing in the market. So it's a really unique group. And then brings us to the networking standpoint. We just threw one of our first in-person events, unless I missed one, or the holiday party too. But this spring we kind of had the first official spring one, and the turnout was fantastic. And I think people really enjoy those. And if there's anything about business development people, it's like they like to be in front of other people. So that's nice to have at the foundation. What other type of events do you plan on having? I know you mentioned the golf event. You can talk about that a little more. What other type of events do you plan on having within the group?
Yeah, just to go back a little bit on what you were saying about the program last week. Yeah, we had about 100 people signed up, and we had about 130 people show up, and it was a lot of fun. So, if you like networking, and if it's even if you don't like networking, this group is so easy to come in and talk to because most everyone are professional business development folks. They know how to network. And if you need help, and this is what I often tell people that are looking to join the group, if you need help with anything, you turn to one of the members, and we're all kind of cut from the same cloth. We want to help. How can I help you? And how can I connect you? So I think with this group that if you ever wanted some help with your company or probably anything that you needed, you just ask one of the members and they're very willing to help.
Yeah, I certainly believe that too. And you're absolutely right about 130 people showing up when we had about 100 signed up. And God bless Raquel, she did the best she could with that. But we definitely got to get a bigger spot next time.
So, Jack, I wanted to add something else. We were talking about the schools and reaching out to the students because I don't believe anyone that does business development starts out their career and says, I'm going to be a business development professional.
Not at all. I knew I wanted to get into sales, but that's a different, that's a different thing if you think about it. What would you say is the difference between sales and business development beyond doing the quotes and like that? How would you explain the difference?
Myself personally is sales is more transactional.
Right.
And yes, you're kind of pushed to make that sale, and your salary is based on probably a base and a commission. So if you're a base and a commission, you're probably doing sales. I don't know, even if your title says director of business development, you're probably doing sales because you are required to close that transaction.
Right. That's a good way to put it. Is sales is much more transactional, whereas business development is much more account and relationship based. That's a good way to think of it. And stemming back to what you were saying, how do you think through the educational aspect we will promote, business development careers? Is that something Michael's working on to allow young people to know that this avenue is out there for them?
Yeah, that's part of what the educational committee does is wanting to get the word out there. And, whether there's a degree now in business development.
No, I don't think that'll happen. Yeah.
I think it's an aspect that every professional should know how to do. I mean, you go to a lot of firms and there's a lot of people that are horrified about getting out and networking. So if you could just pick up a few pointers on how to attend an event, there's all sorts of tidbits on how to approach people, what to approach them about, what to talk about. If you're nervous of going to a group, just go ask a bunch of questions.
Right.
Everyone's so worried about how they're going to be perceived that they get nervous. And I think with the group here with BD Pros is that we really do try to focus on not only helping people that are new to the industry or business development, but also even adding some pointers. I listened to Julie Brown's conversation. I've been doing business development for over 20 years, and I picked up 3 pointers that has already helped me tremendously.
What were they?
One, about asking the right questions. So when you're attending an event, you want something that, how Julie says, they create endorphins, and you don't want endorphin killers. And so most everyone will walk into a group, or if you walk up to someone and say, "Hey, how are you today?"
Right.
She says that's an endorphin killer.
Yeah.
Hey, where have you been lately? Have you taken a great trip over the pandemic? What did you do? And so it's just to get those endorphins going where people are excited to respond and talk to you about, instead of saying, "I'm fine, how are you?" It's very true, but I've been guilty. "Hey, how are you?" And to start the conversation. So that's probably the main thing that I picked up from Julie.
Yeah. And it's so funny because subconsciously we were raised to do that. We don't even think about it. And you're absolutely right. What it does is it engages small talk, and then from there, you're setting yourself up on a trajectory for the conversation to be somewhat blasé, unless it gets taken somewhere else.
Yeah, you know what? I just realized the other thing, the big thing that I got from her talk is, and we all could use this. You go into a networking, say, event, and there's a bunch of circles of people,
Right.
and you want to know how to approach them. So there's things called, I believe she called it a bagel group, where it's a closed circle where you won't get in that group. It could be a group from the same office or whatever, or people that have known each other. They're committed to each other. But when you go to I forgot what she called, like a half a bagel or a croissant shaped group where it's kind of open, then these people want people to come in. So you can kind of read the crowd, and those are the groups that you can join.
Yeah, that's good to keep in mind too. That's very helpful for the listeners too. I wanted to finish it up, and what we've talked about here is great. I think it's very encouraging and excited, and I'm very lucky to be a part of it. Where do you see the group in 5 years' time? We talked a lot about what we have planned, but in an ideal situation, how many chapters do we have? What type of certifications are we offering? Further education, charitable work, if you have any numbers behind that. Where do you really see it going within the next 5 years?
That's a good question. I would like to see a chapter in every large city in the U.S. You'll find business development everywhere.
Right.
We want to be considered as a resource. And so if we don't have it yet, but we're soon going to be posting a whole job bank on the site.
Oh, nice.
So people looking for business development opportunities, but this isn't just for those people. It's for the firms that are hiring them. So they can go in, they can post a position they have open. We'll have people go in and post their own resumes. So we want to be looked at as a resource for the whole community. But the other aspect is I would like to see it open up to larger industries like financial, which I think is already happening. Government, it could be so many different industries. So I'd like to see that opened up. And then again, I would love to see the international aspect of it open up soon.
Yeah, that's me too. I would really like to. I think once we get to that point and open up that first international chapter, it'll be a huge, just moment in the chapter's history. So, I'm looking forward to be a part of it. I think it's a really great group. After being involved in the, conception of that event that we did, and then seeing it come to fruition, that really invigorated me. So I'm happy to be a part of the group. And then once I found out it was a non-for-profit, even though I was at that event counting dollars, once I found it was a non-for-profit, that really even made it more encouraging for me. So I'm happy to be a part of the group. I'm happy to, see its growth and be a part of it. And thank you again for coming on, Guy. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for setting this up, Jack. And we're excited to have you part of the group too. I think there's a lot of potential for you with the organization.
Yeah, certainly. So, we'll have you on again soon. And hopefully we're talking about opening up that first international chapter. All right.
That'd be great. Thanks, Jack.
All right.
Yep. Thank you, Guy. Talk soon. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Talk soon.